Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're methodically unpacking a deeply complex and honestly tragic chain of events that led to a truly horrifying crime in Australia. We're going to look closely at the timelines, the hidden motivations, and the absolutely devastating consequences that happen when massive secrets collide. Let's get right into it. Picture this. It's October 2014 in the upscale neighborhood of Tenerife in Brisbane. A heavy, sickening smell starts creeping through the hallway of a really nice, well-kept apartment complex. It was seeping out from under the door of a ground floor unit. Now, when confronted by his frustrated neighbors, the tenant, a guy named Marcus Folk, played it totally cool. He told them he had simply been making broth, the meat had badly burned, and the smell would clear out soon enough. But things escalated so fast from there. Marcus's electric cooktop had been running at absolute full power for hours, and it actually broke down. So an electrician was called, which meant the property owner had to come over to open up the main electrical panel. While inside, the owner notices drops of dried blood. Marcus is just standing there with a heavily bandaged hand, casually blaming it on a random accident. Well, the owner quietly takes a photo and calls the police. When officers show up, Marcus pretends he needs to secure his dog, locks himself in the bedroom, and literally flees out an open window. And that smell? When the police checked the kitchen, they found a massive metal pot on that broken cooktop, and it contained human remains. Section 1. 2 Hidden Lives. Let's rewind the timeline. To understand how we got to that horrific moment, we have to look at the stark contrast in Marcus's life. He was living an extreme double life. To his family back in Ballarat, who ran restaurants, he was this spotless, polite, independent culinary professional. But his private reality was total chaos. By 2012, Marcus was absolutely drowning in gambling debt. So, to make quick cash, he moves to Melbourne and starts doing adult sex work at an upscale private club called the Pleasure Dome. His coworkers there? They saw a highly unpredictable guy with wild mood swings who actually carried a real handgun in his bag. His family, of course, had no idea about any of this. Now, Mayang Prasetyo faced a similar duality, but for entirely different reasons. Born in Indonesia as Febri, she was assigned male at birth and faced intense rejection from her conservative society, especially from her own mother. To support her family and to fund her own gender-affirming surgeries over in Thailand, Mayang crafted a public facade of a highly successful, glamorous overseas modeling career. Her private reality? She was actually working in the adult services industry all across Asia. She eventually moved to Australia for higher pay and a lot less judgment. Her absolute ultimate goal was just to secure legal visa status to stay in Australia permanently. Section 2. A Practical Partnership. The Setup. When these two met in the halls of the Pleasure Dome in 2012, it quickly evolved into a perfectly practical partnership. Marcus was a total financial wreck, while Mayang was in high demand and making serious money. They start dating. Marcus even goes out to visit her family in Indonesia, perfectly playing the role of the respectful foreign partner. By late 2013, while Marcus is off working a chef contract on a cruise ship, they make a stop in Copenhagen and officially get married. It was a trade-off, right? Marcus gained a financial shield for his endless debts, and Mayang secured a local husband, which gave her a solid path to an Australian visa. The sheer scale of the daily lie they were actively maintaining is wild. They rented that ground floor apartment in Brisbane. They even adopted a dog. But this wasn't just some domestic bliss. This was carefully curated, rock-solid evidence for immigration officials to prove they had a real shared life. Yet, at the exact same time, Marcus completely erased his new transgender wife from his family's reality. He never once told his conservative parents he was married. He was terrified that exposing his sex work and his wife's identity would absolutely destroy his golden boy image back home. Section 3. The Pressure Cooker. Colliding Schedules. You can imagine how their comfortable apartment soon turned into a claustrophobic nightmare. Both Marcus and Mayang were running adult service appointments out of this one single living space. The golden rule was simple. If one has a client, the other has to leave. But, exhaustion and lack of sleep lead to terrible logistical mistakes. Overlapping client schedules meant canceled meetings, lost money, and deeply unhappy visitors. Neighbors started hearing loud swearing, constant shouting, and the sound of things physically breaking through the walls. During these heated conflicts, Mayang knew exactly what buttons to push. She would press on Marcus's absolute biggest fear. She'd lay down a hard ultimatum. She'd threaten to expose his debts, his sex work, and the reality of their marriage to his conservative parents if he messed up her schedule. For a guy desperately clinging to his manufactured pristine image, this wasn't just a casual insult. It was an existential threat.
Section 4. The final escalation. October 2nd, 2014.
The breaking point finally happened on October 2nd. Marcus had a client and brought them straight to the apartment, completely, totally confident the place was empty. But it was the exact scheduling disaster they both feared. Mayang was home, and she was already hosting a visitor of her own. She was absolutely furious at the violation of their one rule and kicked Marcus and his client out immediately. From there, the aggression escalated rapidly. Marcus walks away humiliated, and Mayang is repeatedly calling his phone, just screaming at him. Marcus fabricates this whole story about a dog emergency so he can finally ditch his client, and he heads back home. The ensuing fight was heard across the entire first floor. We're talking nonstop yelling and the sounds of severe physical impacts lasting deep into the night. Finally, neighbors are jolted awake at 2 a.m. by slamming doors and Mayang shouting insults at the top of her lungs. And then, in a single second, abrupt, chilling, total silence. The argument didn't wind down, it just stopped.
Section 5. The cover-up. A macabre cleanup.
Marcus barricades himself in the apartment all day as an odor begins to seep out. Then, street security cameras catch him leaving at 8 p.m. for a nearby grocery store. The receipt from that run is horrifying. Heavy-duty bleach, thick rubber gloves, heavy plastic trash bags, rope, duct tape. It starkly illustrates his methodical, terrifyingly professional attempt to clean up an irreversible crime. He was literally using his kitchen skills to systematically dismantle the evidence. But a careless slip of a blade during this grim process resulted in a really deep cut to his own hand that just wouldn't stop bleeding. He's forced to leave the apartment in the middle of the night and go to the emergency room. And true to form, he seamlessly spins yet another lie for the medical staff, claiming some aggressive girlfriend had attacked him with a knife. They stitched him right up, and he walked back into the nightmare he created. And here is the dark, incredibly ironic twist. When he got back, Marcus made a desperate attempt to destroy the remaining evidence by placing it in a massive pot of chemicals and boiling it for hours. But he failed to account for basic physics. The apartment's electrical system just wasn't built for that kind of extreme, prolonged strain, and the cooktop wiring literally burned out. It was this specific failure that forced him to call the electrician, which brought the owner to the door and ultimately exposed the entire gruesome scene. After escaping through the bedroom window, Marcus knew his carefully built double life had collapsed in an instant. There was no going back. He didn't even try to run far or escape the city. Search dogs tracked him just a couple of streets away to a large industrial dumpster. By the time officers opened the heavy metal lid, Marcus had already taken his own life. And a crucial detail here. Toxicology reports later confirmed he had 0 alcohol or prohibited substances in his system. He made his final decision with a completely clear, sober mind. Section 6. A tragic aftermath. The erasure of Mayang. You might think the tragedy ends there, but this aftermath is honestly so hard to process. In a public interview with the local press, Mayang's own mother offered basically no words of grief for her violently murdered child. Instead, she publicly apologized to the offender's family. She actually implied her own child was somehow to blame, suggesting Mayang had pushed Marcus too far. It was a truly astonishing moment where the victim was treated as nothing more than an inconvenience. And the tragedy compounded at her funeral. Mayang's conservative family completely erased her identity. They buried her under the name Febri, using a male name and an old photograph taken way before her expensive medical transition. They completely ignored the truth of the woman whose hidden life and relentless work had paid their bills, funded her sister's education, and kept a roof over their heads for years. I'll leave you to reflect on this. What is the true cost of living a double life? What happens when two broken people build a partnership purely on financial benefit and nonstop lies? We saw a tragic collision driven by debt, a desperate need for legal status, and an overwhelming fear of the truth getting out. The heavy price of those double lies resulted in a devastating catastrophe where absolutely nobody won. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the narratives around you, and I'll see you next time.